Claire Bennett had never liked parties, especially ones thrown in her honor. So when the staff at Willowside High insisted on hosting a retirement celebration for her, she caved only out of exhaustion. She didn't want to fuss. She didn't want cake. She didn't want the barely warm compliments served with lukewarm punch. Mostly, she didn't want to sit in a room where everyone looked at her like she was a candle being blown out. "You gave us 22 years," Principal Harris had set his hand on her shoulder. "Let us give you one afternoon." One afternoon, Claire thought bitterly, sipping lukewarm coffee from her kitchen table the morning of the party. "That's all I'm getting in return for 2 decades and 1,000 parent emails." She stared out the window of her modest home, the one she used to share with Daniel before the word widow became part of her identity. The word still felt like a stranger in her mouth. Even after 4 years, Daniel would have made her go. He would have made it feel special. He had a way of seeing through her moods and reminding her that she mattered even when she insisted otherwise. But Daniel was gone. The students were long gone. The colleagues, well-meaning as they were, felt like acquaintances in a life she no longer fully belonged to. At 44, Claire didn't feel old, but she felt used up, dried out. She stood up, pushing the coffee aside. She had 3 hours to fake enough joy to get through an afternoon of polite small talk and cupcakes from Costco. The event was held in the school's library, her favorite room on campus. Someone had hung streamers between the bookshelves and scattered framed photos of her on the tables. Most were staff pictures, class photos, or blurry shots of her reading aloud to children 15 years younger than the ones she'd just taught last semester. Claire offered polite smiles, accepted hugs, and thanked everyone like she'd rehearsed. "You're still young," someone said. "You've got so much left to do," she wanted to reply. "Like what? Start over, take up pottery. Learn how to live in a house that's too quiet." Instead, she smiled. "Maybe I'll write a book," she said. She wouldn't, but it sounded good. The only interesting part of the party arrived late. He came in quietly, carrying a sleek black camera bag and adjusting his shoulder strap. Claire noticed him because he looked distinctly unrelated to the rest of the crowd. Younger, clean-shaven, dark curls tucked under a beanie, soft eyes that scanned the room like he was searching for a story instead of a shot. "That's him," she realized, the photographer Jasmine booked. He didn't introduce himself right away. He just moved through the space like he didn't want to interrupt anything, taking canons of laughter and conversation, capturing the way the light slanted through the windows, pausing to get the right angle on a group of teachers smiling with punch cups in hand. Claire mostly avoided him, not because she was shy, she just didn't like having her picture taken. She had always hated seeing herself frozen in time. She could never look at a photo without criticizing it, the neck, the eyes, the softness around her jaw that hadn't been there a decade ago. But at one point, she caught him aiming the lens in her direction. She didn't smile. She didn't pose. She simply looked off to the side, arms crossed, listening to someone tell a story she wasn't entirely paying attention to. Click. She heard the shutter. He didn't ask her permission. She made a mental note to delete it from the set before anyone posted it online. After the party had mostly cleared out and the decorations were being pulled down, Claire stood near the bookshelf flipping through a retirement card. It was full of vague but kind sentiments. "You made a difference. We'll miss you. Good luck on your next adventure." She heard footsteps approach. The photographer stood a few feet away, holding a tablet in one hand. "Sorry, hope I'm not interrupting." She looked up. "No, just absorbing all the cliches." He smiled, warm and hesitant. "I'm Eli Torres. I just wanted to say thanks for letting me shoot today. Your friend Jasmine gave me the gig." Claire nodded. "You do this full time?" "Mostly events and portraits," he said. "And I teach photography workshops when I can. It's a weird mix of paying rent and chasing moments." She raised an eyebrow. "Chasing moments?" He shrugged. "You can't create real ones, but if you're patient, they show up. You just have to be fast enough to catch them." He tapped something on his tablet and held it out. This was one of my favorites. She hesitated, then took the device. It was her, not the version she hated in mirrors, tired, half-smiling, self-conscious. This version was soft open. She was laughing, looking away from the camera light, catching her hair in a way that made her look almost golden. For a second, Claire didn't recognize herself. "I didn't even realize you took this," she murmured. "It was quiet," he said, "but it was real." She studied it longer than she meant to, then handed it back. "You're good," he tilted his head. You're a good subject. Don't lie. I hate photos. I'm not lying, he said, then added, you just haven't been seen properly in a while. The words slipped out so easily that they hung in the air like perfume. Claire didn't know what to say. She felt warmth rise in her cheeks, a mix of discomfort and something else she hadn't felt in years, curiosity. He cleared his throat, sensing the shift. Sorry that came out too, I just meant it as a compliment. No, it's fine, she said quickly. Just unexpected. Eli smiled again, smaller this time. Sometimes the unexpected ones are the best shots. He handed her a card. If you ever want a proper portrait session, no charge. Consider it part of the retirement gift package. Claire looked at the simple white with his name and number printed neatly. I'll think about it, she said. She wouldn't. At least that's what she told herself. That night, Claire sat at her kitchen table again, nursing a glass of red wine, her feet aching from too much standing and smiling. She powered on her laptop, checked emails. Junk one from Jasmine. Wasn't Eli great? He said he'll send over the full gallery in a few days. Curious despite herself, Claire clicked the link. Eli had already sent a preview album. She scrolled through them slowly. They were good, beautiful, even rich with light, unposed reel. Then she saw it again, that photo, the one of her laughing. She zoomed in. Her expression was unguarded. Her eyes were bright. She looked like someone she hadn't been in years. She wasn't sure if she wanted to cry or close the laptop. Instead, she picked up the card, ran her fingers over the name Eli Torres. Underneath it, one short tagline, Moments Matter. Claire stared at it a little longer. Then, without thinking too hard, she opened her email. To alettophoto@gmail.com. Subject, that portrait session. Hi, Eli. I saw the photo, the one you showed me, and a few others. I didn't know I missed being seen until I saw it. If the offer still stands, I think I'd like to take you up on it. Claire almost canceled twice. The morning of the shoot, she stared into her closet as if it were mocking her. Every outfit either tried too hard or gave up too early. The idea of being photographed alone on purpose under soft lighting, with nothing to hide behind, made her stomach knot. She settled on a deep green wrap dress she hadn't worn in years. It had belonged to another version of her, one Daniel had always loved. She stared at her reflection for a full minute before leaving the house, wondering if that woman was still somewhere underneath the careful layers of widowhood and quiet. Eli's studio was tucked above a florist shop downtown. Small, clean, full of natural light. There was a wall of plants in one corner, a coffee machine humming quietly, and a series of framed prints lining the hallway, black and white portraits, all real. None posed, a woman laughing with her eyes closed, a man gazing at something far away, thoughtful, a child mid-jump blurred with joy. Claire walked in cautious. Eli looked up from his laptop and grinned. You came. I almost didn't, she said. I figured, he said, gesturing toward the couch. People rarely want to see themselves, especially when they've convinced themselves they've already faded. She sat. Is that your way of telling me I'm insecure? He chuckled. That's my way of saying you're human. Claire relaxed a little. I've got coffee, he said, pointing to the counter, or something stronger if you're nervous. I keep whiskey for skittish clients. Coffee's fine. She took a mug, wrapping her hands around it like armor. Eli adjusted some lighting, kept the conversation light. He asked about her favorite books. She told him she'd been obsessed with Jane Eyre as a teenager. I thought brooding men were romantic. Turns out they're just exhausting in real life, he laughed, noted. She asked about his photography. Did you study it? Self-taught mostly, he said, adjusting the lens. My mom used to work in a nursing home. I'd go with her after school and take photos of the residents. Something about the way time sits on someone's face, I got obsessed with capturing it. Claire tilted her head. You must have been a strange teenager. The strangest, he said with a grin. But those photos, they taught me something. People bloom differently when someone's paying attention. He lifted the camera. You ready? Claire stiffened instinctively. Not even a little. That's okay. We're not doing Vogue today, just you being you. He started slowly, nothing forced. He didn't tell her to smile. He didn't pose her with awkward hands or fake props. He asked questions instead. What's something you used to love that you don't do anymore? She blinked. That's personal. Exactly. Claire hesitated, then answered. I used to dance, not professionally, just around the house with music on. With Daniel. What kind of music? Jazz. Real jazz. The kind with scratchy vinyl and no lyrics. Favorite musician Chet Baker, she said softly because he always sounded like he was apologizing. Eli lowered the camera for a moment. That's beautiful. It's also sad. Maybe both. The session continued and something shifted. The more she talked, the more she relaxed. Eli had a way of listening that made silence feel like space instead of absence. He captured the little movements, the tilt of her head, the press of her fingers to her temple, when she laughed, the faraway look, when she remembered something. Nothing felt staged. At one point, Claire caught her reflection in a mirror across the studio, hair slightly windblown, eyes wide color in her cheeks. She didn't look old, she looked awake. Afterward, Eli offered her water, and they reviewed a few of the shots on his laptop. Claire leaned in nervous, then stunned. The photos weren't glamorous, but they were honest. There was one of her smiling mid-sentence, another of her with her eyes closed, face turned just enough to catch the light when where she wasn't smiling at all, just looking thoughtful. Real. This one, she said quietly, pointing. I don't think I've looked like this since before. Eli looked over. Since Daniel. She nodded. I think you never stopped looking like that, he said. You just stopped seeing it. Claire swallowed the lump in her throat. You're very good at this. I don't think it's about being good, he replied. I just wait long enough for someone to forget the world is watching. She didn't speak. The silence stretched, but it wasn't uncomfortable. Finally, Claire asked, why do this, portraits of people who aren't famous, just normal people? Eli sat back. Because we all forget what we look like when we're not performing. And I think everyone deserves to be reminded. Claire felt something in her chest shift, like the opening of a door that had been closed for years. They talked for another hour about everything, nothing. He asked if she'd ever traveled. She admitted she hadn't been farther than the East Coast since college. You should go somewhere, he said. Somewhere new, somewhere warm. I'm not that spontaneous, she replied. You could be. She laughed. You're young. You still believe people can change. I think people forget who they are. That's different. She stared at him. You sound like a therapist. Nope, he said. Just a guy with a camera and too much empathy. As she was leaving, he handed her a small envelope. What's this, a few prints? The ones you reacted to. I thought you might want to keep them close. Claire opened it in her car parked just down the street. Inside were 4 5x7 photographs, unretouched, natural, beautiful. In the back of one, written in small handwriting, still becoming. She pressed her fingers to the card, then closed her eyes. For the first time in a long time, Claire didn't feel like she was disappearing. She felt seen. The photos sat on Claire's nightstand for a week. Every morning she'd glance at them. Every night she'd run her fingertips across the matte edges, careful like they might fade if she looked too long. Still becoming, the note read on the back of the third print. Still becoming. At 44, after widowhood, after retirement, after all the noise had settled and the quiet had set in, she wasn't sure what unsettled her more, that the photos made her feel seen, or that they made her feel seen by him. 527, kind attentive, full of the sort of hope she hadn't carried in years. And he looked at her like she wasn't just someone on the other side of a camera. She saw him again 3 days later, by accident. At least that's what she told herself. She had wandered into a small gallery downtown, drawn by a sign that said, One Night Photography, Pop-Up, The Human Lens. Claire didn't know he'd be there. Not really, but she knew the odds. She told herself she was curious about the exhibit about portraits of ordinary people, as the flyer had promised. But when she stepped inside and saw his name printed on the wall, Eli Torres, her heart hiccuped in her chest. He stood by a cluster of prints, chatting with an older couple, laughing easily. Claire didn't move right away. She stayed by the entrance, pretending to study the photos on the wall, while her eyes pulled toward him like a magnet. He wore dark jeans, a black shirt with the sleeves pushed up, and a loosely wrapped scarf that made him look like he belonged in Paris. She took one careful breath, then another, and then, as if sensing her, he turned. Their eyes met. His smile was instant. Claire, he said, crossing the space toward her like the rest of the gallery didn't exist. You came. I didn't know this was yours, she lied gently. He didn't call her on it. Instead, he nodded toward the photos. Want a tour? She followed. The prints were quiet and stunning. Elderly couples holding hands on porches. A teenage girl staring down the camera. Unflinching, a middle-aged man mid-laugh, caught in the unguarded space between self-consciousness and joy. None of these people are models, she asked. He shook his head. They're people I know or meet randomly. I ask if I can spend time with them, take their photo. Sometimes it's just an hour, sometimes a whole week. Claire looked at one, a woman with silver hair brushing her fingers across the surface of a piano. She looks like she's remembering something. She was, Eli said. Her husband died 10 years ago. She said she hadn't played since. I asked her to sit at the keys while I took her portrait. She started to cry halfway through, but she kept playing. Claire's throat tightened. You don't just take pictures, she said quietly. You open doors. He looked at her. That's the idea. They stood for a while sipping wine in plastic cups while the noise of the small crowd buzzed behind them. Claire felt oddly comfortable. She didn't feel like the oldest woman in the room. She felt like herself loosened, almost light. Can I ask you something, Eli said after a pause. Depends on the question. He smiled. When's the last time someone took your story seriously? Claire blinked. What do you mean? I mean, not just listened politely, not just nodded, but really wanted to know who you are. Not who you were when you were married, not who you were when you were a teacher. Just Claire. She didn't answer right away. The truth was simple, painful. I don't know if anyone's ever asked, she said finally. Eli's gaze didn't shift. Then I'm asking. Claire swallowed. Why? He shrugged, but there was a quiet intensity beneath it. Because you say you're not interesting, but I can't stop looking. Her breath caught. He said it like a fact, not a line, not flirtation, just truth. And the way he looked at her, not as someone older, not as someone broken, but as someone becoming it, made her feel 20 again and ageless all at once. After the show, they walked out together. The air was cool and velvet soft, the city lights flickering against wet pavement. She didn't offer to go anywhere. Neither did he. But they both lingered. Want to see something, Eli asked, stopping near his car. Is this where you show me a second exhibit in your trunk, she teased. He grinned. Better. He opened the passenger door, pulled out a vintage film camera. Come with me. They walked 2 blocks down to a quiet alley strung with overhead lights. At the far end was a weathered wall covered in ivy and old mural faded underneath. I love this spot, he said, lifting the camera. You can sit on the ledge if you want. Claire hesitated, then did. The city sounds faded. The moment softened. Eli crouched a few feet away, adjusting the focus. Don't smile, he said gently. Just breathe. She did. Click. He lowered the camera, met her gaze. You look like someone with stories. I have them. Then tell them one at a time or all at once. She tilted her head. To who he held her gaze. To someone who will listen. Later, when they hugged goodbye, longer than a typical goodbye, warmer than polite, Claire drove home with her fingers tingling. In the quiet of her house, she changed into pajamas, poured a small glass of wine, and sat on the edge of her bed. The photos still waited on her nightstand, and suddenly they didn't feel like the end of something. They felt like a beginning. Claire hadn't realized how quiet her life had become until someone started filling it again. It wasn't that Eli was loud. He wasn't. It was the texture of him. A text at noon on a rainy Wednesday. Found an old photo booth near the boardwalk. Want to be impulsive? A voice memo on Friday night. You ever try Ethiopian food? If not, prepared to ruin all future meals. Saturday evenings, even when they didn't see each other, he was present, not in an invasive way, just steady, intentional. Claire, once the queen of structured solitude, began checking her phone like a teenager. And when she wasn't hearing from him, she missed it. Missed him. Their next official shoot wasn't for anything in particular. I just want to show you something, Eli said on the phone. A kind of place that deserves you. She didn't ask what that meant. She just said yes. He picked her up in the late afternoon, his car smelling faintly of lavender and old coffee. He had a playlist cued, a soft blend of acoustic guitar and jazz trumpet that made her chest ache in all the best ways. They drove for nearly an hour away from the city, through winding back roads that turned golden in the late sun. Where are we going? Claire asked, legs curled up under her in the seat. You'll see. When they arrived, she blinked. A crumbling greenhouse, long abandoned, framed in ivy and rust. The glass was fogged and broken in places, but inside sunlight filtered through like liquid gold. "It's like a secret," she whispered. "Exactly," Eli said. "Secrets deserve witnesses." He helped her climb through the doorway. Inside, it smelled like damp earth and forgotten stories. Eli set up his camera but didn't rush. They wandered first. Claire trailed her fingers along the edges of a rusted potting table. "I used to garden," she said softly. "Daniel and I had this tiny patch of soil behind our first apartment. We planted tomatoes. We were terrible at it." Eli listened. She pointed to a hanging fern that had somehow survived. "I like that. This place still breathes." "You do too," he said, raising the camera, even when you think you don't. She met his eyes and let him take the photo. This session was different, less posed, more raw. She didn't try to look elegant or composed. She let her hair fall loose. She didn't hide the lines by her eyes. She laughed loudly, at one point, and covered her mouth. And Eli caught that moment mid-laughter. "I wish you could see what I see," he said, scrolling through the images. Claire leaned in. "Show me then." He did. And she did see it, not the version of herself she used to be, not the version she had grieved for, but this Claire, this woman here and now alive. As the sun began to sink, they sat side by side on an overturned bench, sharing a thermos of strong coffee Eli had brought. "You know," she said, "I didn't want a retirement party." "I guess that," he said. "I thought it would make things worse, force me to say goodbye to a life I already lost." "But," she trailed off, but he prompted gently. She turned to him. "But you showing up, it made it feel like maybe something new could begin, like the world wasn't done with me yet." Eli was quiet for a long moment. "Then I hope you know I never saw you as someone at the end of a story." Claire smiled, eyes soft. "You see people like nobody else. I just pay attention," he said. "The world's too noisy, but when you really look at someone, listen, you find all these layers they forgot they had." He paused. "And you, Claire, you have so many layers." Her chest tightened again, this time with something warm, not grief, hope. When he dropped her off, he didn't rush the goodbye. They stood by the car, stars beginning to flicker overhead. "Thank you," she said. "For what? For seeing me when I didn't ask to be seen." He nodded. "It's not something you ask for. It's something you deserve." There was a silence between them that felt like electricity, not loud but alive. Claire looked at him. "If you kiss me right now, I'm not sure what happens next." Eli didn't move closer, but his voice dropped quiet and sure. "Then I won't," he said. "Not yet." She breathed out, both relieved and disappointed. "But I'm not going anywhere," he added. "You should know that." She smiled. "I believe you." Inside her house, long after the door closed and the lights dimmed, Claire stood at the mirror and stared at herself, not to check for flaws, not to hide, just to see. And what she saw now was a woman still worth watching. Claire stood in front of her closet holding the same navy dress she'd worn to Daniel's memorial service years ago. She let it fall back onto the hanger. Tonight wasn't about grief. It was something else entirely, not a new beginning, exactly, but a moment that felt like a door opening. And this time she was ready to walk through it. The exhibition was being held in a renovated warehouse near the waterfront, Eli's biggest show yet. Dozens of his portraits were being displayed, including several that had never been shown before. When she stepped inside, the soft hum of low music and murmuring voices wrapped around her. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and lavender. Claire had almost turned down the invitation, but the envelope had come handwritten with her name inside a single card. "Come see yourself the way I do." Her heels echoed gently on the polished concrete floor as she moved from one photo to the next. She recognized some of the faces now. The piano woman, the laughing man, a girl mid-spin in a laundromat. Each portrait felt alive, personal. And then she saw herself. The greenhouse, her hair loose, her eyes unguarded, a half-smile caught between memory and something brand new. But it wasn't just one photo. There were 5, all of her, spread across one section of the gallery, a subtle sequence of moments from that first cautious shot at her retirement party to the photo of her leaning against the ivy-covered wall, a quiet defiance in her posture. She stared at them for a long time, not out of vanity, but because they felt like a mirror she hadn't realized she needed. A mirror held by someone who chose to see her fully. Too much, came Eli's voice behind her. She turned. He was dressed simply black, button-up sleeves rolled to the elbow, a quiet nervousness in his eyes. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "But why me?" He stepped closer, not too close, just close enough. "Because people forget that beauty doesn't disappear. It changes, deepens. And because you reminded me that time doesn't take everything, sometimes it gives us back more than we lost." Claire's throat tightened. "I didn't expect any of this." "I didn't either," he said, "but I kept showing up, and so did you." A pause. "Then, Claire," he said gently, "this isn't about an age gap. It's not about roles or timelines or what people will say. It's about what I feel when I'm around you, what I see when I look at you, and I've never wanted to stay somewhere as much as I want to stay with you." Tears welled not from sadness, from recognition. She'd spent years living for others, then years surviving. And now here was this man, not just younger, not just kind, but present. She felt more alive now than she ever had at 30. She smiled, eyes brimming. "I'm not the same woman I used to be." "I know," he said. "You're even better." They stepped outside together, the wind off the water tugging lightly at her hair. He took her hand, not forcefully, just naturally, like he'd been waiting for her to offer it. She did. And they walked past the lights, past the gallery windows, into the night that didn't feel like an ending, but something just beginning. 6 months later, Claire's garden bloomed again, not because of Daniel, but because she wanted it to. Eli came by twice a week sometimes to take pictures, sometimes just to sit and drink coffee beside her on the back steps. She didn't ask what it all meant, didn't demand a label. But one afternoon he showed her a new photo, a black and white candid, her laughing sun in her eyes, dirt on her hands, a flower pot in her lap. On the back he'd written, "Gary, still blooming with love, E." She pressed the photo to her chest and knew he hadn't just changed everything. He'd helped her see everything she still was and everything she still could be. The story of Claire Bennett and Eli Torres reveals a profound truth. Sometimes the greatest gift life offers is someone who sees you when you've forgotten how to see yourself. At 44, Claire, a widowed teacher, felt her life had faded into quiet retirement, her vibrancy buried under years of loss. Yet Eli, a young photographer, didn't just capture her image. He captured her essence, showing her a version of herself she thought was gone. His lens taught us that beauty doesn't vanish with time. It deepens, waiting for someone to notice. Claire's journey reminds us that we often hide from our own potential, convinced we're past our prime. But Eli's gentle persistence, his photos, his questions, his presence prove that connection can rekindle hope at any age. This story urges us to embrace those who see our layers, who remind us we're still becoming. It's a call to look at ourselves with kindness and to cherish the people who hold up mirrors to our resilience. Love in all its forms isn't bound by time or loss. It's found in the courage to let someone in. Have you ever been seen in a way that changed you? Share your story in the comments. We're here to celebrate every moment of rediscovery. If this story moved you, subscribe to our channel for more tales of hope and transformation. Join our community and let's keep inspiring each other to bloom.